Hi, I'm Dean Sage.
And I'm Jack Curvin.
And this is Show Me Your Deck,
a podcast where we explore the intersections of oracles and chakras,
using our original decks to create new insights. Episode 42.
42, here we are.
42, take two.
Take two.
The microphone decided to switch on us there at the last second.
Yes, I have microphone gremlins.
We were talking about how I hate doing the summary and how, it is hard. It's very hard to try to bring it all together. And I feel like I have a requirement to make it somehow meaningful. It's not just this is what happened. That's what the AI is going to give us today. We're trying AI transcription and AI summaries just to see what happens. But I feel
100 words of esoteric summation.
Yes,
summaration. Here, there's a new word for us. Summaration. I actually kind of like that word now.
It is a very good word.
Summaration. Did I invent that?
I think you might have.
Oh, I love that.
We'll see if the AI can spell it.
Oh, God. Actually, I found that AI can keep up very well with... If you give the AI enough context that it knows you're being splendiferous, it can generally catch up.
I took an episode of this podcast, or last episode, and I fed it to part of Google's suite product called Notebooks LM, where the idea is that you can update your own information, like your own notes, your own recordings, and make a little LLM about you, and then you can ask it questions. So you can ask it questions about so you can imagine if you had a team project or something that everyone's working on, and you need to get details and you can't remember some certain detail. You can ask it the question and it'll look through your own notes and find it for you. But I found this little button that just says innocuously audio summary. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So I click it and I wait about 5 minutes and I get a freaking podcast with two people talking about our podcast.
Yeah, it sounded like we were being given a really great review.
It was honestly, I showed it to our friend Lisa, and we considered it a magical moment because it was technology doing something that you understand. You understand how it got there, but just having it presented to you like a golden egg, and you're like, oh, that's kind of magical. Yeah,
it's fun. I enjoy playing with AI.
I did give it the option to write some summaries, and it did write them, but they were just this card came up and then they said this, and then this card came up and then they said this, and I'm like, that works from a certain point of view. But yeah, I feel like our summaries have to be sort of meaningful statements. I write them like I wrote my book, I think.
With a lot of drudgery and pain and fear. This is supposed to be a 100-word summary of magic.
Well, just, with greater intent, I guess. So
Sure.
We'll see. Let's get to rolling, though.
All right. The tetrahedron of doom is here. Let's see which deck we'll start with. Number three, the abstract deck, the pretty flowers deck, the intersections. Okay, now let's see which card from the deck. 31.
Okay.
Ooh, this is a pretty one. This is Vishuddha, throat, air, aqua, I say, and how it is intersected by the third eye, water, blue, I know. So how I say is influenced by I know. Throat is influenced by third eye.
Letting that sit there for a second. I feel like we had nearly this connection in one of the last episodes. I think we had throat and crown, if I remember correctly. Saying what
we did have that one.
What you know to be true. I say and I know. Okay.
How what you say, how you express yourself, how that's influenced by the information you take in, the way you perceive the world, how you understand your context. So the way in which how you express yourself is filtered through the lens of what you know. So it's kind of like it's looking at the way your self-expression is a manifestation of your own personal sense of self and culture.
Mm.
How you move through the world and how that influences what you say, or the art you make, or the music that you make.
Well, self and culture, that's an interesting topic, because how much of what we do is culturally bound, how much of what we do is individually created. We talk about freedom and free will in this context, because the idea is how much free will do you have, right? Like, how much are you actually making independent action in what you're doing? Like, how often do you not just react based on, the brain connections that you've formed? How often are you purposefully choosing something? And I think a lot of the philosophers will say that it doesn't happen that often, if it happens, right? I mean, there's two sides of that debate. But if you have free will, even in the context, you don't necessarily use it all day, every day.
Right. I'm curious. I have my book handy. Let's see what it says. Number 31. Okay, so do you want me to include the profession or the haiku, or just go into the prose? How do you want me to do this? I don't want to change the card too much by bringing other information in.
I'm feeling probably the prose, but go with your gut. Go where you're being led.
Putting I say. Oh wait. This is. Oh, I did this wrong. We have to scratch all that. This is not throat and third eye. This is throat and crown.
I thought I know it was crown. Okay, you had me confused.
Okay, so everything I just said, we have to rewind a little bit. It's the way you express yourself and how that's influenced by your sense of morality or connection to the universe.
Okay. I mean, not too far off. We were talking about culture.
Not too far off. Putting I say with I know creates religion and philosophy. Akasha, or ether, is the elemental of all, and its influence highlights the ethereal quality of a chakra. If air is like the sky, then sky plus spirit is heaven, and words spoken to heaven are prayer. This is a ubiquitous need for people to express wonder toward creation. Every culture tells stories to explain it and our place or purpose within it. That might express itself as prayer, mythology, sermons, research, lectures, or debates. Regardless of whether it be religious rituals, philosophical debates, or scientific hypotheses, we have always used words to explore and attempt to define or understand the eternal within which we find ourselves. Whether you are a religious person or not, contemplating or dedicating some portion of your discussions toward your sense of purpose affords opportunities to understand the ways in which we can appreciate our lives. Express wonder as you see best. I personally do not feel science contradicts spirituality. It is simply another language explaining universal principles.
So the free will thing wasn't too far off, because we were talking about culture, and when it comes to religious expressions, I think that's probably one of the places where we do have the most free will, because there's something very intentional and active about spiritual things. I think. Some people may not.
Culture is pretty much boiled down to what the combination of food, religion, and language are. So wherever your culture developed, it developed out of its way of providing you and yours with food, language, and religion. So that is the foundation blocks of culture.
All right, so this is I know, I say. So we're speaking about truths. You mentioned philosophy, you mentioned science. You mentioned how we mediate it through language. I think that's the tricky part of this card, right? Is that we have to be able to say it to know it in some cases. And actually there's philosophers that think that we can't contemplate without words. Like, we can't be philosophical without words. Language was a prerequisite for consciousness.
That kind of makes sense, because otherwise it's just images in your head and you can't even explain them to yourself, let alone to somebody else.
And this is why like I was just talking to our friend Lisa, and like there's a trend now. We're in Pride Month as we record this. There's a trend now towards not using labels, and there's kind of like a rejection of labels. But labels are actually insanely helpful because they give you words to describe your experience, and it makes it feel less like you're crazy just having this odd experience when you've got words that help you describe it and maybe explain it to others.
Mm-hmm. What can become unhelpful is when people don't understand what a word means, or when different people understand the same word in different ways. Mm-hmm. So I can see how, I understand why people want to be done with labels because they are used to separate people into categories. I understand that. But also, identity grows out of the way you experience the world and the way you share that experience with other people. And I'm not saying that tribalism is something that's really, really just awesome, but it's not useless.
No, not at all. And in fact, it's what kept us alive. And it's what allows us to find others like us. So, saying that you're pansexual, bisexual, demisexual, these are all things that I use to describe myself. Those are words that help me relate to others. And I think that's where tribalism is good. Like it helps you relate to others and, okay, I'm not alone. There are other people that experience the world in a similar way to me. Wow, that's powerful and awesome that I have that as a resource. But then being like, well, bisexuals aren't real queer people. Like, you have to be pansexual to really, like
that's when the categories start being used. That's when they start getting weaponized. For example, I was watching one of those videos on YouTube where you've got one person of one position surrounded by 25 people who disagree. And this particular video was one gay guy in the center of 25 people who were homophobic. And it went the way you expect. But something I did not particularly care for was his simplification of just calling us all queer trans people. It's like, I'm not queer. I am gay. And that is my label. And I am not queer. But he went through this process explaining his position to everybody, talking about the way it simplifies talking about. You don't have to say LGBTQIA, but I can't even say it. LGBTQIA. Okay, fine. LGBTQ plus. Okay, fine. LGBTQ. All right. So at what point do you simplify? I understand. I was in the room when people were trying to figure out how to simplify this acronym. And I rejected queer then, and I reject it now. But he, on behalf of all queer trans people, was telling these homophobic people that queer has been reclaimed by the community and no longer is a slur. It's like, that is not true. And part of what he was getting from these people was that they thought that queer was a slur. He's like, no, it's not a slur. I was like, it is a slur. I have to agree with them. And it's not for any one person to tell and educate people that an entire community of people can be reduced to one label.
Well, the problem that you face is that in the literature, it is reclaimed and is used as an umbrella term. But in reality, as you're pointing out, like it can still be used as a slur.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I understand why there would be a trend away from labels because they are confusing and they are divisive. But at the same time, there are distinctions between us as individuals and as communities. And those should not be erased. Like when you say that, like when people say that they're colorblind, it's like, well, but people's color is important to them. I've never met anybody who doesn't want to be known as what color they are. They don't want to experience prejudice and bigotry because of their race. That's different.
When you said colorblind, I went to red-green colorblind. I was confused for a moment. I have caught up.
See, this is why labels are confusing.
I have caught up now. Yes.
But when somebody says that they don't see color, it's like, well, but now you're erasing culture. So it's one of these situations where when we talk about our place in the universe and, what this card is reminding us to do is to be contemplative. And that's what this is. Being contemplative doesn't mean that you always agree with people. You might argue, you might debate, but you're still having the discussion that engages people at a level that forces them to think about whatever the topic is. In this instance, at this moment, it's labels, but it could be anything else.
Well, it's a problem and a solution all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Words help. Words communicate, bring in thoughts into something real, something that can be mediated between two people, but words can be weaponized.
And they can also confuse.
Mm-hmm.
So as much as they can clarify, they can also confuse. The same word can serve both functions.
Well, and we have the same problem with our labels. They get different definitions. Like bisexual is a hard one for a lot of people. Like there's some people that would be mad that I like pansexual better because that they'll feel like that's bi erasure. And, as a part of the community that often does get sort of sidelined and erased, I should be supportive of them.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the trouble with words. That's the trouble with labels is that you don't necessarily get to tell everybody which ones to use and which ones they like. Like I use queer, you do not, you hate it. I do not have the same problem with it, but we have very different experiences of that word.
Yeah.
And
well, even with the word bisexual versus pansexual, the way I understand the difference, and this is me, this is another example of how I understand a label in a way that other people evidently don't. I always took it to mean that bisexual meant that you were attracted to men or women who were cisgendered, and pansexual meant that you were attracted to men or women who were either trans or cisgendered. So I thought the distinction was, one that moves towards gender identity.
And it has been, and it was used that way. And that's why, like for me in the formative time period where I developed these words, it had that coloring. And that's why pan meant more to me as a person, but bisexuals, they're trying to reclaim it and not have it mean something so, bipolar, which is unfortunately in the word itself, right? It has a duality in the word itself that leads to those kind of things. But that's like you and me of our certain age. That's what we're influenced by. That's how we kind of understood it. But now the words are changing over time as well.
I also remember, from up here on my mountain, I'm not even 50 yet, but I remember back in the day, a lot of gay people, a lot of gay men absolutely refuse to accept that bisexual men are even real, that they're just closet cases who are afraid to be gay. And it's like, these are the conversations that we have to have so that we can understand ourselves and the world better. But the card isn't reminding us that this is easy. It's reminding us that it needs to be done. Mm-hmm. And as a context card, what the reminder I think might be implying going forward is that when you discuss whatever is going to come up in these other cards, you can't automatically assume people are going to agree with you just because you're being altruistic. Mm-hmm. You still need to be honest, but you have to be open to hearing what other people say so that you can be informed and evolve if you need to. Because you're not right about everything. And if somebody does make a point that's valid, you have to be willing to absorb that and adjust.
You said honest, and I thought of earnest at the same time.
Same. Honest and earnest. Do them both.
Well, I think the reason earnest came to my mind is that you have to have a desire to connect, right? Because there's a lot of people that use words to just blanket. They just blanket. They want to drown out. They want to overwhelm. They want to make their words something like a wet blanket that just sort of
drown out everything else. Mm-hmm.
So I think for this process, you have to be earnest in that you're wanting to communicate when you're talking to others, because it's very easy just to kind of shout at each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember that the news used to be so boring. Oh my God, it used to be deathly boring. And the news would come on and all the kids in the room would go, because it was so boring. The news is so exciting now and I can't stand it. I would rather the information simply be given to me so I can figure out what to do with it. And I'm not saying that all your conversations need to be boring or tempered down with no passion. I'm just saying that there isn't anything gained or won by out screaming somebody.
I mean, you brought up news. That's a perfect example. That's feeding yourself back to yourself. It's a feedback loop. It's a wind tunnel. And
it didn't used to be that way. No. It didn't used to be that way because it was just information.
It was just, here's the facts. And not everything had two sides, right? Not everything was something that you could just get two people on to shout at each other for 30 minutes.
Well, I do have to say that even though all of them were equally boring, I always thought Tom Brokaw was the cutest. So I always watched whatever one he was on. Was that NBC? I don't remember, but he was so cute in the 80s, the 90s.
I think I remember Dan Rather more.
Dan Rather was cute too. Oh, but Ted Knoppel or whatever that last name was. Yeah, Ted Knoppel. But yeah, I was like Tom Brokaw. I thought he had a nice voice.
Mm. Well, I mean, we are talking about voice and crowd, and having a nice voice is helpful when you're creating.
I know it's I know it's just so on the nose, but I can't stand it, and I have to say it anyway. I just think Anderson Cooper is marvelous. If you ever think of it, you should try to find the clip when he had his own daytime show and he had music guests, and the episode when Janet Jackson came on and he just can't even talk. He is so besotted with starstruck wonder. Wow. I was like, I love this man even more now. Plus, he's really young in the clip. He's just so cute. He went gray so young. He was just Silver Fox from like the age of 13 or something.
It feels like me and my hair loss. I don't think
his went gray and yours went on vacation.
Mine permanently moved. That's my hair's an expat. It went to my ears and.
Well, we all have our thing.
Yeah. All right, so let's see
what your first card has to say about this concept of being honest and earnest and open to change.
Okay, I was just going to say we need to kind of summarize the point. Honest and earnest and open to change. I like that. Okay, I got one here. Oh, this is awesome. So this is the Ace of Storms. The Ace of Storms. The First Breeze.
Okay.
So the storms
is this still throat chakra?
No, this is heart chakra.
Heart chakra. Okay.
Yeah. So this is the suit of swords in the tarot, which is the off-maligned suit of swords in the tarot. And I had to say of it, the roaring of inspiration, whether divine, creative, or firmly rooted in the beauty of the world itself, that roar is teeming with hope and possibility. You can feel the intensity of something fresh, new, and how you long to wrap it in your wings and soar high. The great spiral of warm air pushing you higher and higher. From such great heights, you can see everything. It is all so clear and simple. But life is not lived aloft, and so you must return to the ground and use what you have seen to begin the work, to do the doing. There's a time to receive the inspiration of the storm, and there's a time to weather the storm so you may prepare for what lies ahead. You cannot let grief drive you to chase every thought, every idea, lest you miss something great. The storm gives and it also takes, and you must let things go when it is time. You see much when you are aloft, but you cannot land every place your eye traces and your mind imagines.
So that's a very convenient follow-up, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
While you're being inspired and sharing your ideas, remember that other people can give you feedback that will be helpful. And although you might be, riding the heights of inspiration, you cannot see everything. So, look for, if you're on an airplane, you still need somebody waving little flags around to help you land. But it's nice to have such an emotive card come right after that. The context card. The
idea here is kind of that balance between joy and grief and the finding of peace, right? The sort of and this is that first breeze. So like you can imagine the storm clouds gathering and you just have that sudden change in air pressure and you just feel that little gust, that little whisper of wind. That's kind of this moment. It's the precipice, right? It's looking over the edge of the cliff and you're spreading your wings and am I going to go? Am I going to fall? Am I going to fly? And it's kind of
exciting moment.
It's also, it's also thinking about, that expectation of jumping and that sort of dizziness that you feel that's both, fear and excitement.
It's the moment on a hot day when all you have to do is jump in, but the first splash of swimming pool water is going to be really cold. And once you get through it, you're fine, but I just can't quite get myself to jump.
Even though it's going to be better in the pool.
Well, yeah, even though it's going to be better in the pool. Change is always, uncomfortable, scary.
Well, and that's why the swords are off maligned, because they cut both ways. They're a very sharp suit. I find it interesting that it kind of intersects with the heart chakra, because my heart chakra is red. Because storms are, volatile, tumultuous. There's ups and downs, and there's moments of being beaten down by them, and then there's moments of soaring high and aloft on them. And your heart is more of the heartwood, like it's here. I think it's green, right? Your heart's green, because you use the typical colors for all the colors. Yeah, I changed my colors up a little bit to suit the deck.
So, within the context of being honest, earnest, and open to change, what does that mean as you're getting ready to jump into the next adventure?
Well, I think it's a tempering, right? Like, you can leap without looking, right? As soon as you feel the breeze, you can leap and trust that the air is going to be there. But you have to have a sense of others and of your connection. So I think looking at first principles here, like we talked about free will way back at the beginning, having a sense of your first principles. What is it that you think and believe? What is it that you profess? Because we're talking about I say, right? What is it that you profess? What do you say to others? And as you gain this inspiration, this moment of lift, how does that correlate? How does that work with what you profess and what you say about what you know to be true?
So, regardless of the form it takes, it's still a dialogue.
And this could be interpreted as beginning a dialogue. So maybe that's kind of where our reading is taking us, is there's a firm base that you have for a conversation, but this is your sort of impetus, your reminder, your call to take that first step. Maybe it's a tough conversation. Maybe it's a long awaited conversation. Maybe there's something deep that you need to communicate.
It might even be a conversation that you think you know what's going to happen and you don't like the outcome, but it's necessary to do it anyway. So it might be something you dread.
It could be. I think this is calling you to take it with fresh eyes, though. So even if you are dreading it, even if that is what we end up finding out today, you need to take it with fresh eyes, fresh ears, using your first principles to guide you, to root you, to ground you, but not to bring preconceived things into it. I think we talked about the honest and earnest. Like, don't bring what you think they're going to say and what you think they believe into this arena. Give them a chance to be fresh and new too. And maybe you'll connect over something that you couldn't have thought, you couldn't have predicted, you couldn't have preconceived, because you didn't have information, you didn't have knowledge, you didn't have connection.
There's a situation where people try to plan what a conversation is going to be and try to script what all their possible responses are going to be, no matter what somebody says. And I understand how that might be helpful in a debate situation, but in just a regular human interaction, you can come prepared to understand what it is your perspective is. But if you enter that exchange already set, then what's the point? If you aren't open to hearing how they might change you, then why do you even want to talk to this person?
Well, social anxiety people have to script conversations, important conversations, depending on circumstances. So there's times where, in order to, autistic people face this too. Like, there's times where, like, if you're trying to communicate with a doctor about a problem that you're having, like you might need to script that. But if you're meeting someone to discuss philosophy, right, to discuss first instincts, first beliefs, then yeah, you scripting that conversation might make it seem easier to you, but I think you're losing out on the opportunity. So, there's a time for perhaps preparing, and then there's a time for being open and listening. And I think that this is calling you to think of yourselves in that time, in that moment.
Okay. Shall I roll?
You shall roll.
Deck number 2, the professions themselves. Okay, and card number 5. So this is going to be another throat chakra.
Oh, okay. Reinforcing.
I profess that I am the words that ring true. I profess that I am the words that ring true. This is root, red, muladhara, I am, and how it's influenced by throat, aqua, air, I say.
This is an important one because we were just talking about groundedness. Here's true groundedness in what you say. So this is all just building on the first idea. You are prepared to leap, right? You're prepared to have air, but you've not forgotten your groundedness, your rootedness, that sense of safety and security. And I think that's the problem with these conversations. These conversations deal with your root metaphors, whether you want them to or not, because they're your first principles. They're the things that you hold closest and most dearest, and from which you operate. They're the ways that you construct the world into meaning for yourself, and they are deeply rooted. So when you have these conversations, it can feel like you're losing ground. It can feel like you're unsafe when someone challenges one of your root beliefs. That can unbound you, or can unroot you. And you have to remember that you're approaching this from that rooted perspective. It's okay to reshape your core metaphors. It's okay to reshape the foundational beliefs that you have if there's something that makes more sense, if there's something that brings more truth to you. And that's the other half of that card, the speaking the truth. You have to recognize it when it happens. And it can be hard. It can be very hard.
This was the first haiku I wrote.
Oh.
Of the 49, I wrote this one first.
Why? What about it?
It's what jumped out first. And once that happened, I was like, oh, I guess I should write the other 48.
Well, it's funny because it is how you do creation. Like, if you're from a solid ground, you speak truth. That's you communicating in writing. You are verbalizing your grounded state, your grounded ideas.
Well, and also because of that, you're able to speak truth to power, whether that's the power of a parent or a friend or a boss or the government or God. When you are the words that ring true, it means that you know yourself well enough to trust that the way you express yourself is honest, earnest, and open to change.
Yeah, I'm definitely getting...
You have to know who you are first.
I'm definitely...
It's very difficult to speak from this place of, well, I believe this, and I say this, and I know that. And it's like, well, I poke you here and you fall apart. Then nothing you... What? So nothing you said was accurate? Know yourself, know thyself, and then speak thy truth, thine truth. Thy truth, thine is before a vowel. So when I wrote this one first, I don't remember what was going on, but that one was interesting because it doesn't, if you were to look at the book, all the other 48 are very, very specifically aligned to an image that has to do with the two elementals. This one doesn't quite, because I didn't quite get the pattern that I wanted. And I didn't want to dishonor it because it started the whole process. But the image for that one in the book is a millstone. And for earth. But then the grinding doesn't really have anything to do with air. But I wanted to keep it because of the momentum that it created. But of the 49, this is the one with the weakest symbolic connection or metaphorical connection with its intersection. Because I was still trying to figure out what the art was going to be. And something about it felt really appropriate. I was finally ready. I knew who I wanted to, I knew which part of myself I wanted to connect with. I knew what I wanted to say. And so this haiku kind of just jumped out, but it jumped out in a form that doesn't match perfectly with the intersection of a metaphor of earth and air.
Well, the millstone's interesting because, it's that you grind against it. So it
creates dust. Yeah.
I mean, dust fills the air. Air over time can ground down a mountain.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I mean, water's in there too. Obviously water and air work together in this regard. But
what we're doing right now is making it fit backwards, and it does, but it wasn't fitting forward from the moment I made it. I made it work because of the dust connection, but that's not what I had in mind when I did it.
That's fine. I mean, this is there's uncanny realizations that occur as you're creating, and there's associations that you don't plan for but happen. At least when I'm doing things.
I find it all the time.
I was reading on Instagram, someone was saying, when I'm writing dialogue and the character reveals something that I didn't even know about as the writer, and I was like, oh, I relate to that. There's times where I've been writing and my characters have just sat down in the corner and been like, no, this is not what we're doing. So I think it's interesting that you didn't have your system yet, and that's how you work, right? You work to your system.
Yeah.
But here you were open, earnest, and honest to making something new. And you did, and it still works. It's not as perfectly combined in the system. I think that's what makes this one very beautiful to me, though. Can you read it? Can you read the haiku?
Yeah, sure. And I said all that. Now I'm looking at it, it's like, well, but there is air and earth here. I just wasn't conscious of it when I was doing it. Okay, so spoken millstones crush injustice, lying rubble, pulverizing truth. So spoken is air, millstone is earth, crush, injustice is a lot of times spoken, lying is spoken, rubble is earth, pulverizing is air, truth is, there's earth and air all over this thing. But that's not how I was thinking about it when I did it. When I went backwards to look at it, it was already there and it was cool.
Well, I think this was the product of gestation. And
yeah, because I thought about it for a while.
When you gestate on something, it comes out in a complex fashion. Like there's a difference between you didn't do this, but you could have just said, here's my format. I'm going to put these two things together and I'm going to do it 49 times and I'm going to make something and it will be consistent, but it doesn't mean that it's good. Like consistency does not mean goodness. And I think this goes back to our main topic here, which is you can be consistent in your first principles and that does not make you a good person because your first principles can be flawed. So consistency is not goodness in itself. So being consistent in what you profess, if you're professing something that is untrue, that is a problem.
Especially if you don't even see it, even when other people try to tell you.
And true gestation, true creation, true generative ideas are messy. This is why I love ethics as a philosophy, because there's such an attempt to make it simple because that's
It's not.
that's what philosophers want to do. Like they want to say, okay, to be good, you put more good into the world than you put bad. That makes you a good person. And then you've got people that say, well, no, you have to have the right principles. So if you have the right principles, then you'll be a good person and you'll be okay.
And you'll do more good than bad, and you'll be a good person.
Well, then but the thing is that they start to play off of each other. So how do you put more good into the world? Well, I have principles that tell me that, or I decide in the moment how to do that. And then you have a fight between, well, is there a moral principle that you can say that is always good, or is everything subjective? And it creates these dichotomies. And it's funny because we all live in the middle of it. And these people are all trying to put to words what we just sort of have to instinctively feel. And this is where I find it the most fascinating, because really, really, truly, it's deep metaphors. It's core moments that drive your actions in your daily life.
Well, it's also labels. And as we were saying earlier, people right now are trying to move away from labels a bit because we're over-labeled. This is an ongoing conversation across millennia that has all sorts of labels, but it's difficult to really sit in any one way of thinking because context is constantly changing. And what you know about any particular moment is constantly changing. So here's a situation where I'm glad that there are labels so that we can be between them, because they are like perhaps the directions on a compass. I may not necessarily want to go north, but it's nice to know what direction north is in.
Mm. Well, and there you get to having principles, deep core beliefs, first principles, is not a bad idea. It's a good idea. And this conversation that we've been kind of hovering around, we get back to here in that you want to speak truth. But truth as you know it, truth is unfortunately relative.
And subjective.
And there are times where things are universal, but they're universal because they just take on their own being.
Well, but even if they're universal, then the problems come up when you try to approach it. So, okay, kindness is good. Okay, all right, fine. Or just whatever is good. But how do you accomplish that good? That's where people get in fights over that part. It's like they're all trying to be good, but they're not trying to achieve it the same way. And so then they get mad at each other and blah, blah, blah. So it doesn't really even matter if anything is labeled as universally good or bad, because the manner in which it is approached or avoided doesn't agree.
Well, and now that I say that, I start to backtrack. I was thinking of some recent political events where they're setting stuff up where a lot of people will be harmed. And it feels like it should be universal to say, no, don't harm people.
Yeah.
But in their minds, they're helping people.
But what is harm? So, it's one of the issues about words and labels is that there is their surface meaning and then there's the applied meaning. It reminds me of a song by Madonna called, what is it called? It's from the Bedtime Stories album. Bjork wrote it, actually. It might even be Bedtime Stories. But one of the lyrics is, words are useless, especially sentences. How can I explain how I feel? And if people think that they understand what words mean, but then you find out that nobody understands them the same way, then sure, words and labels start to become useless. But that doesn't mean that they're always useless or always broken. They give us a place to start from. But that's the whole point of having conversations where you're open, earnest, and, open to change, is if you don't even agree with what the word harm means in that context.
Well, we get back. I push core metaphors because it's something I believe in my core. I think it explains a large amount of human behavior, and I have personally benefited from that type of therapy and that type of work. So I will continue to expound the benefits of it. But this is where metaphor trumps language, because a lot of our actions are not reasoned actions. We don't tease out the best action to take. We respond based on our first principles, based on our root metaphor. We respond to a stimulus. And this is, I guess, going back again to the whole free will argument. So we are not rationally considering, we're not senators, debating. We're just creatures reacting. And metaphor is very powerful in that because it creates an image, a connection, something that is sublingual, that just doesn't necessarily come out in words, but you feel it.
And as a coincidence, 100 of those humans happen to be senators.
Yes.
Operating the same way.
Yes. So there are definitely times where you debate what to do. There are definitely those times, and that may be where the free will lies. There are other times where you just react.
Yeah, and what it sounds like to me is that people really do need therapy, because when they have these reactions and when they speak in this manner, when they then make their own feelings contagious on television, what we're witnessing is a manifestation of their, what do you call it? Your core
metaphor, core belief.
Core metaphor. So we're seeing your core metaphor playing out on TV, upsetting everybody. So go get some therapy and stop upsetting everybody. Especially if you're in a position of power. Yes. Get therapy.
Examine. Being earnest, open, and honest means with yourself as much as with that other that you're communicating with. Our reading is taking an interesting turn. There's something universal about it. Like it definitely feels more high level than some of our other readings. Like we're not getting sort of a deep core message. We're talking about core messages, but we're sort of setting them up as being...
Well, but that is the reminder that these big ideas that seem like they should be easy to define are not.
They are not.
And that so far is the reminder in these 3 cards, that you can know who you are and you can speak your truth and you can be ready to start, and you still need to be, ready to engage with people and be open to change how you see or experience something. If you are wrong or if something else is better, if you're right, fine. But if you're not right, admit it.
Well, I think the dangerous part about the conversation that we're talking about, the dangerous part about these kinds of conversations, is that you will bring truth and they will bring truth. And it's a give and a take. It's a give and a take. And you'll come out of it changed, and change is scary. Changing your root metaphors is scary because they're what you hold precious and dear. They're deeply in you. And when someone challenges that, remember, you feel unrooted, and sometimes you have to be unrooted. That's the scariest part, is that sometimes the firm ground you've planted yourself in is sand, and you need to move. You're not there.
Or it might be that you've flourished in this spot. Now here comes a backhoe and it's going to dig you up and stick you somewhere else. And now you need to thrive in a different part of the yard. Deal with it. So what's interesting is the way in which people, myself included, anybody, clings to what they call truth. And if you and somebody else are completely convinced that you're each completely right and the other's completely wrong, well then, before you even try to discuss whatever the topic is, just stop. Just stop and talk about the basic terms. Are you even having the same conversation?
Well, part of what makes philosophy so interesting is that they spend the first 50 pages defining what they mean when they say what they mean, so that there's clarity when they move on. And that's part to me is fascinating. The defining what you mean when you use a word, and trying to be so precise about words that are imprecise.
Which is why people want to move away from labels. But then what do you have? Then you have sign language and hula dancing. I mean, you have to have something.
Yeah. you need something. You need a basis to communicate.
And even if you changed it to like badges, it's like, I've got a purple badge and you've got a green badge. Well, mine's round and yours is square. It's like, well, it's still these are labels.
Well, they gave all the flags to everybody because we kind of all had the pride flag, and the pride flag. And by the way, just I have to say this because I don't think people know this anymore. The pride flag is not a rainbow flag. No. So the rainbow is Roy G. Biv, and it goes in that order. The pride flag does not go in that order, and each of the colors was specifically chosen. I won't get into it here, but each of the colors was specifically chosen to represent something. So yes, it is a rainbow of colors, but it is not a rainbow. The gay flag, the pride flag, it was not great. It was not a true rainbow. But what they did is they gave everybody flags, and a lot of people like them. Like Hot Topic has belts with the flag colors that you can buy. And this is where that tribalism kind of... I
don't even know what the flags mean anymore. Like they have these different combinations of colors. I'm like, ooh, gray? What? Oh,
hey,
bye.
hey, one of my flags is gray.
I know. Girl, get some color.
The demisexual flag has gray and purple.
Go taupe at least. I mean, something.
But my point is that it was something that gave people a thing to identify with, and it feels good to be included. It feels good to be part of something.
Did you see the straight pride flag?
I try to avoid all those things.
Well, they got their flag too.
All right.
It's really kind of gross. Sorry if you're straight and you have a straight pride flag, but your flag is ugly. I mean, get a better graphic designer. Find somebody gay to design your flag. I don't know, but even if you don't do it with words, and even if you don't do it linguistically, you're still speaking through a language of symbols in some way or other. Going back to another part of our conversation, you can't have a conversation until you can even understand what the ideas are. So again, I understand not wanting to be tied up in labels, but then what else is there?
Well, you brought up a good point, and we always kind of go down these rabbit holes. I like it that we include this, but math is considered by some to be the universal language, yet it is still symbology. It was created originally to explain what the Greeks did with geometry. Algebra was created to represent the shapes of squares and triangles and the intersections of their volumes. Algebra then made a language that could be used to describe this experience. And I think this is where
that's where the word abracadabra comes from.
Well,
did you know that?
I did not know that.
The word abracadabra comes from people who couldn't read mathematical tomes, presuming it was magic, and looking at all the symbols on the page, they couldn't read it, so they just called it abracadabra, and they thought it was magic.
Oh, for some reason I thought it was a Hebrew word.
I don't know. Maybe it has both. But they all these alphabets begin with alpha and aleph, so I mean anything's possible, and then beta and whatever.
What Proto-Indo-European and phonetic languages, and there's linguistics. We could get we could really get down a rabbit hole in linguistics. But my point is that I think we will find that we can't describe certain things in the universe with the math we have now. We are going to need to create new math. We're going to need new words to describe the experience before we can understand it.
Yeah, and I don't know if you can call it a universal language when so many people can't even do it, but I understand what you mean, that it can be used to explain or describe all sorts of situations. But when people call it a universal language, I'm like, it has the potential to be, but until everybody can access it, then no.
Well, I'm sorry, it's not someone, I don't know who, but the people that worked on the Voyager project, they encoded certain mathematical constants into the record that they sent out to be discovered by an alien race, and to prove that we were conscious and intelligent life. We tried to encode things like math, but the interesting part is that then we had to think of, well, how do you encode something that's written in our language? because math is our
Right.
language. It is a language that is ours. How do you encode pi into a universal language? And so it's funny because they had to take the universal language and then try to translate it into something that was more universal, so that creatures that have no basis for anything of our language would look at it and say, "Oh, we recognize that mathematical principle. We recognize that concept."
I saw like a circle with like a line through it in a right angle or
Yep.
something.
Yep.
But then that presupposes that whoever's quote unquote looking at it has eyes. So, it's it's too complicated. And let's just get rid of labels, but we can't.
Well, okay, so let's come back home. So what we're really saying is that this conversation is going to be mediated by words. Words are imprecise. Keep your grounding. Keep your inner sense of security, realizing that you might need to change where you are, what ground you're in, but don't lose your sense of safety and security from being grounded, right? So take it into yourself, make it part of yourself. Realize that you're touching other truths. You're touching other I knows out there.
Yeah.
And they're going to have something different to offer you.
Well, and there's also A is true, B is true. Both can be true at the same time, even if they seem like they conflict. It might be a situation where you and the people you are interacting with, maybe you are all right. Maybe. Somebody doesn't have to lose for you to win.
Well, the game theory you just brought up. There's a very real sense that things are limited, and in order for one to succeed, one must fail. That's like capitalism. That's culture. Like, that's boiled into our culture. That is not something that other cultures share. They don't always have that belief.
It's kind of strange when you think about capitalism. They're like, I have to have this money, then I will have it, and then you will not. And there's this, finite amount of money, and I need some of it, and now you can't have it. It's like, but they keep making more of it. It's like, think about it. If the stock market, okay, if there's only so much money, then how can the stock market keep growing in value? There is no such thing. There's, you know what? I just realized it's like, there's no such thing. This is all just, lights flickering on and off of a screen. Now, I'm not saying that everything in life is as simple as that, but when you start treating something as really, really precious, maybe you should first ask yourself, is it as precious as I think it is?
Are your truths as precious as you think they are? Or are they convenient, right? Are they learned? Are they just modeled after generations, right? Is it something that just got passed down in your family? It's interesting. Like, just you and I grew up. Poor is a hard word because poor has different meanings and there's different gradations and levels. I was not food insecure, right? I did not ever have to worry about where I was going to sleep at night. Right. These things were not part of my life, but there was have not, right. I went to school with a lot of haves and I was a have not. And it shapes you, right? There's generational things that shape you, and those things kind of add up. So I have a very hard time throwing something away. I have a very hard time scraping off my plate and not finishing what I was given. It's deeply in there.
A lot of that comes from our parents learning from their parents, and their parents grew up in the Depression. So there's still, I don't know that it's everywhere, but when I was growing up, you finished your plate. You just did. And so it creates some unhealthy eating habits where if you take too much, then you have to finish too much. But my grandparents, all four of them, were, I can't diagnose anything, but they sure seemed like hoarders to me. I mean, they would keep stuff that made no sense. Just made no sense.
That was probably the worst thing that happened. I had to leave most of my accumulated stuff behind and move. And I moved with like 3 or 4 bags of stuff, mainly clothes, but like, just, like some little stuff. And that was before we met. That was a couple years before we met. And I sort of grieved that because I had amassed quite a little library of books.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I had things like I had lived independently. I'd lived with my parents. So I kind of had, you know, utensils and plates, and, you know, just the accoutrement of living.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to abandon it. There was no way to take it with me, and there was really no way to go back and get it. And so
it was lost.
It was lost, but it actually freed me so that now I buy very few books. I bought 2 books recently. One was on machine learning, great book. Why Machines Learn, highly recommend it. If you have any kind of interest in these things, they do go through the math, but it's well explained, so you don't have to know how to do it to follow it.
Okay.
And then because of that book, I bought one of the most famous books on calculus, because I never did calculus when I was in high school. I just cut out. I was so tired of the teachers. I was like, no, I'm not gonna take another math class from you guys. Nope. So I never learned calculus, and I'm working on some things now where calculus kind of plays a part, and I'm like, no, I want to know some more. But like, my point is that I buy very few books. Like, I have one shelf of books that I've accumulated over the last decade. And then I try to do everything else digital. So I try to have as little as possible.
Yeah. I've done lots of purging over the years, and that's why when I moved into the apartment I'm in right now, it was so shocking that it was so much work, because I thought I had purged a lot
In your preparations,
and I had to actually move everything, and I was like, oh my God, how can one it's like, I had a 800 square foot apartment, 1 bedroom, 1 bath. I was like, how did I fit all this shit in here? And it all spread out. Now it feels a 2 bedroom apartment. It's like, I'm really good at nooks and crannies.
You are.
And I don't give myself enough credit for like the way I Tetris all my stuff together, because I can make a place look very, very neat and very, very tidy, but it's bursting at the seams. But you wouldn't know that even if you open a drawer. It's not like everything's like jumping out at you, but it's like it's difficult to let go of stuff because I don't buy a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And when I buy something, I really need it, but then the need passes, but then I don't want to get rid of it. So I don't buy a lot, but I accumulate a lot. It takes a long time for me to accumulate all stuff. But then once I do, then I have to move. And it's like, where did all this shit come from? I don't even buy this much stuff. I was like, evidently I do.
Well, this is a good example of first principles and how the deep parts of us affect us, and how some things aren't contemplative, right? Some things aren't free will. Some things are just reaction. Some things are just ingrained, and we're poised now, I think, to continue this conversation. So I'm going to pull from my deck. I was kind of hoping for more buzziness. My deck's a little bit quiet this morning, but I've got one here. Oh, we've got the Primal. Ooh, I love this one. This is the Primal, also known as the Magician in the tarot deck. You already have what you need. Now do it.
Okay. All right. Yes, sir. Wow. Okay.
The Primal, the Magician, is about shaping the eternal into the elements. So they are the ones that create the elements that are later used by like the creator to create the things of the universe. But this is the prime mover. The reason I called this one the Primal is because they're the prime mover. They're not God, but they are like God. This is the part of us that is divine like. This is the part of us that is celestial, is that we take, and we've got the crown, right? So we take from the Akasha, from the ether, and we formulate the elements of our lives. So you already have what you need. Now do it.
Is this what is being addressed when you say namaste to someone?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But this is the throat chakra in my series.
Well, we still have more to say then.
Yes, that's the interesting part. So this is where intersections occur. So my deck has intersections, but only in the higher chakras. So this is the throat chakra interacting with the root chakra, which, oh my gosh, didn't we just have that? Didn't we just have that one?
Yeah, we just did that one.
Yeah.
Okay, well, speak on it. Have it. Let's go.
I like the Primal because there's a utter sense of freedom and there's an utter fear of freedom. This is existential freedom. So we've been talking about free will, not free will. Is it this? Is it that? This card really kind of brings home existential freedom, which is looking into the abyss and realizing anything can happen. Anything is possible. And there's a terrible fear that comes along with that, as well as a terrible responsibility. This is fear and loathing. This is Kierkegaard.
And anticipation.
Mm-hmm.
And excitement.
This is Hegel and Heidegger. And
It's like anything can happen, including the good. Yep. Including the good.
And this is the realization that, you can be good or bad or both. And you do have free will. You do have choices that you make. And you can move in any direction. You're going to face resistances in certain directions, and certain directions are going to be easier, and especially, who you are and where you are in life and what privileges you are party to, right? There's all sorts of things that will affect what happens, but you can do it. You can move in that direction.
And you don't have to be perfect at it. And you don't have to be perfect in general. At the same time, if you have a misstep, it isn't particularly helpful if you just say, well, nobody's perfect. That's not thoughtful.
No.
The acknowledgement that you don't have to be perfect and just blaming that for whatever you do that isn't right, that's not the same. Acknowledging when you make mistakes is a moment for learning. It's a moment for, humility, perhaps. It can be a moment of joy when you recognize that you don't actually have to do something you thought you had to do, but it isn't something to be ashamed of and then just dismiss as, well, nobody's perfect.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the idea that anything can happen, you can do anything, it's pregnant with potential. Just anything could burst out and it could be good. I think that's what, at least for me, when you say, well, anything can happen, it's like the first place I go is all the bad stuff I can imagine. It's like, well, why don't we go to the good stuff that could happen? We as a human species probably need to invest more in optimism.
Well, it's our brains. Our brains evolved to imagine all the bad things so that we could survive them.
Yeah, and I get it.
We weren't an apex predator. We're still not technically an apex predator.
You go knee deep in the water and you are not apex anything.
Yes. So, we grew up being hunted by things. And so anxiety is a trait that has survival as part of it. And it's why it exists. It
still shows up in our mythology. Have we discussed this, where dragons come from?
Mm-hmm. I think so.
It's a combination of raptors, big cats, and snakes. We still are fighting dragons in all of our adventure movies. You want to talk about core metaphors? All the things that could eat us, all the things that are faster than us, all the stuff that are bigger. I mean, we're really not that impressive. If it weren't for thumbs, we wouldn't really be shit.
Well, so all of our aliens are insects. That's another deep metaphor.
All of our aliens were insects. What does that mean?
If you think of all the alien-like creatures that we create, they're all insectoid. Usually
with the big eyes. Yeah, usually like flies or something.
Octa. I can't think of the word for eight-legged.
Octopedal.
Octopedal. There we go. Usually octopedal because spiders.
Oh God. Well, it's just funny because we're still fighting those same demons at all times. I'm writing a book about fighting demons.
You are writing a book about fighting demons.
I'm about to finish writing a book about fighting demons.
The primal is a reinforcement for your card. The primal is a calling to shape in your safe. I think I know I keep saying that. But you're safe as you're entering this realm of truth and sharing, you're safe. I think you have been dreaded in this conversation. I think that because it is unrooting you, right? You know that you have to interact with this idea, this person, this community. You know you have to intersect with it, and you know that there's things there that are going to challenge you, and we don't like that.
So, where possible, and maybe that isn't possible in this particular instance, but where possible, when you know that you're going to have these conversations, have them with people you can trust to be honest. So, I don't know, like for that YouTube video, I don't know how honest it is for one person to sit in a circle with 25 people coming at them and just attacking them in every other way possible. I don't know that that's what I would consider to be applicable in this conversation. I'm talking about when you sit down with somebody and you might disagree, but you at least approach it understanding that that disagreement doesn't have to equate to hatred. And it doesn't have to equate to disrespect. Unless, of course, what they believe diminishes or harms you. That's not the same. Mm-hmm. If what you believe is going to get me killed, then we're going to have words that aren't as pleasant. But like in a general discussion, it feels like everything in American the cultural dialogue just feels like everything is end-sum and everybody has to win. And it's like, not everybody hates you just because you didn't vote the same way. Not everybody hates you because you like mustard instead of ketchup. Calm down.
Well, here's the problem. Everything in the news is portrayed as a horse race where there is one winner, and everything is portrayed as having an equal and opposite idea. Not all ideas have equal and opposites.
No, so it's not binary. A lot of stuff is not binary.
The idea that humanity should be allowed, should allow diversity is not an equal and opposite. The idea that humanity should allow tolerance, not equal and opposite. There are like, and that's the problem I think you have with this video is you have the one person, the 25, like that was 25 people that believed something that erased the one person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's
why I don't feel like it's an honest conversation.
It's not. It's not, and that's not the conversation that the cards are talking about. Like they're not talking about that conversation. You're not going out and arguing with people that think that you shouldn't exist. That happens enough out there. This is not that.
No, this is not that.
This is not that. This
is the exchange of ideas that helps you grow as a person.
This is you learning about transgender. This is you understanding that you have some internal bias. This is you interacting with a different culture where you might not understand microaggressions. Patty LaPone just got in trouble. This is where you may not understand microaggressions. You have to sort of stop and face it and go, oh goodness, this is true of me. I have not known this before. Now I am confronted with it. Now I am, beholding it. What do I do with it? And that's where the primal.
What happened with her? I don't know what you're talking about.
It was kind of shown that there was a track record of some microaggressions against Black Broadway actors. And
okay.
She had a most recent sort of spat where she was like, oh, that person's not very senior and they didn't they're not really a superstar. I forget the words that were used, but in essence, they didn't compare with her. And some people came forward and said, you know what, we've had this experience of her before and we see a pattern here. And then she came out and she apologized, and I hope that she was able to learn from it.
Well, that's different than what's happening with J.K. Rowling, who just digs her heels in and gets meaner and meaner when she's confronted with hers. So good for Patty LaPone. I'm glad to hear that. And it kind of reminds me of something that came up in one of our conversations. I don't remember how many episodes passed with Ozzy Osbourne's daughter making comments about immigrants and then trying to backtrack it. So this is good when people recognize how they can improve as people. And it's another example of what you need to hear may not be pleasant, but it can still benefit you.
Mm-hmm. And that's the point, is that you sort of already know going into this conversation that you're going to have to change something about yourself. You're going to have to address a deep core belief of a first factor. You need the magician's energy to have the ability to reshape something. And that's scary because you have to break it down first. You have to undo to redo.
If you're talking about the namaste portion of yourself, if you're talking about the magician portion of yourself, that's not the part that's fixed in shape anyway.
Mm-hmm.
That should remain malleable. It can't be anything but malleable. If you don't change, that's you refusing to acknowledge your true nature, which is to be malleable and powerful and infinite and able to absorb new experiences. If you refuse that, you're actually undermining your own nature.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's why the primal exists in the tarot, in my deck. That's why the magician exists, is that you are constantly able to change, but you have to be willing to change. Otherwise it does solidify. The plasticity of the brain is something that we know about, but it doesn't mean it's forever.
It diminishes.
For some people who don't examine, who don't interact with their core metaphors, who just continue to react, the brain hardens. And
you want your brain to be something like a wet sponge. It can become like a desiccated sponge. You need to do Sudoku. You need to read books. You need to do art. You need to go and exercise. You need to be surprised by things. You have to challenge yourself, or your brain is going to dry up.
The brain just wants to have everything be easy and quick, and we have to work to make it remain malleable. And it's, as you grow older, it gets harder.
Literally.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. Good point. You have to allow things to be different, and it is hard. I begin to face it now, like the younger generations. I'm just like, I have reactions, and I'm like, oh goodness,
I do too. And I don't want to be the cranky old man shaking my fist on the front lawn, but some of what they're doing isn't okay. Some of what they're doing is great. Like the way in which they don't tolerate workplace abuses, the way they just embrace each other without as much regard for race and gender, that's all great. But along the way, they also embrace some other stuff that's just really, I don't know. I've known a lot of people in this upcoming generation that just don't want to work at all. It's like, it can't be this way. I know that you don't like the lighting, but you have to have this job. I've known people who've walked out of jobs because they didn't like the lighting.
Well, I think jobs are interesting because I think there's a rootedness that I think millennials and Gen X have. At least the older millennials. I think maybe some of the younger millennials might kind of be towards the other end. But we sort of understand we're in the world we're in, and we sort of have to accept it. We can want to change it. Yeah. We're not devoid of that, but you have to work in the system to change the system. You can't just shout about it online and expect it to change. You have to actually get out there and do it. And I like people like AOC, but people, there's criticisms are, she caved on this issue. Well, yeah, because she needed to get another issue taken care of. She's working with people. You need to give to get. She's a politician. Yeah. She's not a saint, and she's not.
She's not a bartender anymore either.
Correct.
That's like the reason she's still in Congress is because she's figured out how to play the game, and all that's fine. That's part of learning to grow and change. But caving on one issue, really, when you look at what she's done over the course of years and years and years, okay, cave on an issue. It's fine.
Well, and I think the same thing happens with work now. Is that yes, I want work-life balance. I absolutely do. But I understand that there's going to be times where I have a 5:30 meeting where, and the CEO is the only time that the CEO can meet. And of course I'm going to be there, and, in this case I was able to take it from home. So, I didn't have to stay at the office, but
I think one expression of the young generation culture that I'm finding my brain getting hard about is in music. When it first happened, it was cute, but I really am ready for rap to move past its big wet juicy pussy phase. It's like, I really don't need to hear about anybody else's vulva ever. We got all 50 years of it all at once in the last 5 years. It's like, okay, let's talk about anything else. I don't want to hear about anybody's genitals ever.
I think it's out there. I think that is part of our old man-ish. I think it's out there. I don't actively go try to engage with it, so I can't really criticize it too much. I hear what you're saying. I think that there is, in some of the things that I've heard, too much focus on just sort of like who you're banging and how big your dick is, and
then they all use the same words as like, what? I don't want to hear the wet anymore. No more wet. Use the word slick or something. Anything. Get out of thesaurus. I don't care.
Well, I mean, that's kind of Cardi B's fault and Megan Thee Stallion. For recent years. We love WAP.
WAP energy.
we picked you up from the airport, and I think it was like the weekend that it came out, and we were like, have you heard? And you were like, I have heard. And then we listened to it like 3 times on the way home.
And that's when it was something to do. Now it's just, oh my God. There's a swimming pool over there full of all the liquid that's fallen out of all these rappers' bodies. It's like, can we do a little less? Please.
It's out there. And I think if we went and engaged, we would find that there's conversations happening that we're unaware of. And I think that's kind of what this whole conversation is saying, is that there are things that you're unaware of. There are conversations, there is growth to be had. And, rap is developing out there somewhere. And I've heard pieces of it here and there. I don't flock to it. I like Eminem. Some of the stuff that he's made, has gone in that other direction, where I've heard content and ideas and things that are interesting and challenging. His album about his addiction and his treatment for addiction, very, very moving things in those pieces. But I mean, he also has the "How big is my dick?" and
is he still doing all the homophobic stuff, or did he finally grow up?
Yes. I think he's actually very supportive, but it's also the context of who he is and where he came from, and. Yeah. There is a lot of homophobia in highly masculinized areas, and unfortunately rap is highly masculinized a lot. It's changing. Like there's some female rappers that are changing that and kind of questioning some of the masculinity of, or toxic hyper masculinity of these things. And there's gay rappers that are coming up. There's challenges to this.
Well, the biggest song in the history of music was by a gay black rapper. So, Old Time Road or something. Yeah, it was number 1 for 19 weeks.
So yeah, there's things that you're going to intersect with that are challenging, and you're going to remain mutable. But let's find out where we end this, because we've had an interesting road. Let's do yours. Mine's not very talkative today.
Well, we're going to end with the sassy deck. So
perfect.
Oh God, what's this going to be? Is it more WAP? Let's find out. Do I have a WAP card?
I think you do, actually. I think we've had it before.
do I? Oh my God. Well, we're right in the middle. We're right in 24. So what is it's going to be right in the middle? So it's probably going to be in the heart phase then.
I mean, par for the course.
24. Oh, yes. Okay. Well, here we are. This is Anahata, heart, green, wood. I love, as it is influenced by third eye, water, ajna, icy. So green and blue. Open your eyes and listen. Indulge a curiosity. Learn more about it. Make it a practical skill. Well, look at all this. So you've gone out, you've had these conversations, you've done this learning, you've been open to new experiences. Now you need to do something with it.
Yeah, the last 2 cards definitely said do something.
Open your eyes and listen. Indulge a curiosity. Learn more about it. Make it a practical skill. So I need to go learn the lyrics to all these rap songs and learn to appreciate them. You know what's funny? My favorite female rapper is Missy Elliott. And okay. I mean, I have always loved her. And I mean, she gets just as raunchy as anybody. It's fine. In fact, she was one of the female rappers that made it okay to be a raunchy female rapper, just like Lil' Kim and all them. But when you actually sit down and try to learn the lyrics and you get them, there is so much joy from learning how to rap one of these fast songs. Also, my favorite male rapper is Busta Rhymes. That's impressive.
That is very impressive. Yeah.
So when I learned the lyrics for What's It Gonna Be, that's the song he did with Janet Jackson, I just gave myself 35,000 high fives. I was like, this is amazing. So I can see why people enjoy it. I just wish they did something more artistic with it. But that's me.
It's out there. I think that's the point. It is out there. There are people that are using rap as an art form to have conversations.
In the 80s and the 90s, it wasn't exclusively political, but it was a lot more connected to events. Now, it seems, I mean, a lot of it is still personalized and autobiographical, but the parts that are just, lyrically vapid, those are the ones that bubble up enough for me, a non-consumer, to finally find it. I know that the intelligent stuff is out there, but that's not what bubbles up. What this card is reminding me is I need to go out and find it. Mm-hmm. Because one rapper who I don't know very well, and I probably should, I don't even know their names. Yes, I'm that old. But the one who just did the Super Bowl with that absolutely marvelous song.
Oh, Kendrick Lamar, right?
Who? Kendrick Lamar. Yes. I need to go and learn more about his stuff. He evidently, in the last couple of years, did one of the first male rap albums where he talked about the vulnerability of his feelings. Just an entire rap album about how vulnerable he feels. It's like, well, I need to go listen to that.
We have a members only version of the podcast. You can go to Patreon and subscribe there, and you get to hear us talk about how the reading affected us personally, what we're taking away from it in our own lives, and just get a little extra. We call it the extra deck, actually. You can go to YouTube at Show Your Deck on YouTube, and you can see the pretty colors that we have arranged for our decks. You can see the cards themselves and get a visual sense of what we're doing. The cards are really beautiful. We spent some good time on those. Our books and our decks are available at showyourdeck.com. You can get access to Jack's decks. He has 4 of them, as well as the book, which you can get directly from Jack. Our cards are done through a distributor. And my book is available there through Amazon, either paperback, hardback, or free on Kindle Unlimited. Jack, where can we find you?
I'm at 49 Haiku. So on the intrawebs that would be 49haiku.com. And on Instagram, it would be at 49haiku.
I am Dean Sage Media. Find me if you dare. I have an Instagram. It's at Your Deck, and we'll say goodbye.